I am Sarah, 45, and my boss fired me to replace me with his 24-year-old mistress, right in the middle of a board meeting. Before I tell you about the absolute destruction that rained down on him 5 minutes later, let me know where you are watching from in the comments. The mahogany table in the conference room felt like a slab of ice under my fingertips. The air conditioning was humming, but the silence in the room was louder. Richard Sterling, the CEO, sat at the head of the table. He looked like every corporate villain you've ever seen in a movie, slicked back silver hair, a suit that cost more than my first car, and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Next to him sat Bella Rossi, the executive assistant who had been hired 3 months ago and now, apparently, was sitting in on board meetings. She was twirling a gold Cartier bracelet on her wrist. Clink. 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 The sound was driving me insane because I knew exactly whose money paid for it. Sarah, Richard said, his voice smooth, like oil on pavement. We've been reviewing the quarterly projections. And frankly, your performance hasn't been aligning with the dynamic new direction of Sterling Media. I stared at him. I didn't blink. Dynamic direction? I repeated. Richard, I built the Q3 strategy that just secured the Johnson account. I'm the reason we're in the green this year. Richard waved his hand dismissively, like he was swatting a fly. Old strategies, Sarah. We need fresh energy. Youthful perspective. Bella here has some incredible ideas for rebranding. I looked at Bella. She smirked, popping her gum. Yeah, Sarah. We think your approach is a little outdated. No offense. It's just very boomer energy. I am 45 years old. I am Gen X. But I didn't correct her. I just tightened my grip on the leather folder in my lap. So, Richard continued, leaning forward, clasping his hands. We're going to have to let you go. Effective immediately. Bella will be taking over as VP of Marketing. The board members shifted uncomfortably. They were old men, friends of Richard's golf club, spineless and checked out. They wouldn't save me. You're firing me, I said, my voice steady, though my heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. To promote your assistant, who has 0 marketing degree, to vice president? Careful, Sarah, Richard's eyes narrowed. The charm evaporated. This is an at-will employment state. And security is already on the way to help you pack your box. I need your office cleared in the hour. Bella wants to measure it for new curtains. Bella giggled. The beige is just so depressing. I looked at Richard. I looked at the smug satisfaction plastered on his face. He thought he had one. He thought I was just a middle-aged woman with a sick mother and a mortgage who would cry, beg for a severance package, and leave quietly. He thought he was the king of the castle. He had no idea that for the past 3 weeks, I hadn't been working on marketing strategies. I had been working on his funeral. Metaphorically speaking, of course. I glanced at the clock on the wall. 10 a.m. exactly. You know, Richard, I said, a slow smile spreading across my face. It wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of a person who is watching a car crash in slow motion. You're right about one thing. The budget definitely needs trimming. But you're wrong about whose salary is the problem. Excuse me? Richard scoffed. Pack your things. Actually, I stood up. My legs felt strong. I don't think I will. But I think you might want to start packing. I turned towards the heavy double doors of the conference room. What are you doing? Richard barked. Sit down. 3, 2, 1, I whispered. On the count of 1, the door swung open. The sound of high heels clicking on the hardwood floor echoed like gunshots. Richard's face went from red to a terrifying shade of pale gray. Bella stopped twirling her bracelet. Standing in the doorway was Eleanor Sterling. She wasn't wearing the apron and comfortable sneakers Richard usually described her in. She was wearing a tailored black Chanel suit, her hair was pulled back in a severe bun, and her eyes were cold enough to freeze hell over. And in her hand, she wasn't holding a tray of cookies. She was holding a stack of papers identical to the ones in my folder. "Hello, Richard," Eleanor said. Her voice was quiet, but it carried more power than Richard's shouting ever could. "We need to talk about my money." I sat back down and watched the blood drain from my boss's face. But to understand how sweet this moment was, how absolutely delicious it felt to see his world crumble, you have to understand what he did to me. You have to understand the hell of the last 6 months. Let's rewind. 6 months ago, my life was chaos, but it was manageable chaos. I was the director of marketing at Sterling Media, a mid-sized advertising firm in Chicago. I loved the work. I was good at it. I was the person who arrived at 7:30 a.m. to make the coffee and the person turning off the lights at 8 p.m. Richard Sterling was the CEO, but everyone knew he was a figurehead. He spent his mornings networking at the golf course and his afternoons taking long lunches with clients that never seemed to result in signed contracts. I ran the ship. I managed the team, I soothed the angry clients, I balanced the budgets when Richard's expenses got a little too heavy. I didn't mind the hard work. I'm from a generation that believes you put your head down, you do the job, and you get rewarded. I was proud of what we built. But my personal life was falling apart. My mother, Martha, had been diagnosed with congestive heart failure. If you have ever cared for an aging parent in America, you know the nightmare I am talking about. The insurance copays, the specialists who don't take your plan, the medication that costs more than rent. I was drowning in bills. Every month, I sat at my kitchen table, surrounded by red-inked notices, trying to decide which bill could be paid late. I was driving a 10-year-old Honda that made a rattling noise every time I went over 40 miles per hour, but I couldn't afford to fix it because Mom needed her heart medication. I was banking everything on the end-of-year bonus. Richard had promised it to me in writing, well, via email. "Record profits this year, Sarah," he had written in December. "Expect a 20% bonus in March. You've earned it." That bonus was my lifeline. It was going to pay off the medical debt and maybe, just maybe, let me hire a part-time nurse so I didn't have to rush home every lunch break to check on Mom. Then came Bella. She appeared in January. Richard introduced her as the niece of an old college buddy. She was 24, gorgeous in that effortless, Instagram model way, and completely unqualified. Her resume listed social media enthusiast as a skill. Richard made her his executive assistant. "She's here to learn the ropes," Richard told me, clapping a hand on my shoulder. "Take her under your wing, Sarah. Teach her everything you know." I tried. God knows, I tried. But Bella wasn't interested in learning Excel spreadsheets or client acquisition strategies. She was interested in scrolling through TikTok and taking 3-hour lunches. Whenever I tried to assign her work, she would sigh, roll her eyes, and say, "Richard said I should focus on the creative vibe of the office." And Richard? He changed. He started dyeing his hair. He bought a new Porsche. He started wearing cologne that smelled like desperate midlife crisis. And he was spending a lot of time behind closed doors with Bella. I'm not stupid. I knew what was happening. But in corporate America, you learn to look the other way. As long as it didn't affect my job, as long as I got my bonus, I didn't care who Richard was sleeping with. But then, the workload started shifting. "Sarah," Richard said one afternoon, tossing a file on my desk. "I need you to finish this presentation for the board." Bella was going to do it, but she's overwhelmed. I opened the file. It was blank. "Richard, this is due tomorrow morning," I said, feeling the stress headache building behind my eyes. "I have to take my mom to the cardiologist at 4 p.m. "Priorities, Sarah," he said, checking his watch. "We all make sacrifices. I need this done." He left at 3 p.m. to take Bella shopping for office supplies. They came back the next day with no staplers, but Bella was wearing a new pair of Louboutin heels. I stayed until midnight doing his work. I missed my mom's appointment. I had to pay a $100 cancellation fee I couldn't afford. That was the dynamic. I was the donkey, carrying the load, while the show pony pranced around in new shoes. But I kept telling myself, wait for March. Wait for the bonus. Just hold on. I was tired. I was exhausted deep in my bones. I looked in the mirror and saw the dark circles under my eyes, the gray hairs I didn't have time to dye. I felt invisible. I think a lot of women my age feel that way. We hold the world together, we care for our parents and our children, we run companies, and yet, men like Richard look right through us. Unless they need something. And in March, Richard didn't just need something. He took everything. March 15th. The day the bonuses were supposed to hit our accounts. I woke up at 6 a.m., grabbed my phone, and checked my banking app. I needed to see that number. I had already mentally spent it, $5,000 for the hospital bill, $2,000 for the credit card, the rest for savings. The balance was unchanged. I refreshed the app. Nothing. My stomach dropped. Maybe there was a glitch. Maybe payroll was slow. I got to the office early. The atmosphere was weird. Tense. People were whispering in the break room. When I walked in, they stopped talking. "Sarah, Richard wants to see you," the receptionist said, not making eye contact. I grabbed my notebook and walked to the corner office. The glass walls were frosted, but I could hear laughter inside. When I knocked, the laughter stopped. "Come in." Richard was sitting at his desk. Bella was perched on the edge of it, swinging her legs. She didn't move when I entered. "Richard, I just checked payroll," I said, trying to keep my voice casual. "The bonuses haven't gone through." Richard sighed heavily. A performance of regret. "Ah. Yes. Have a seat, Sarah." I sat. Bella pulled out her phone and started texting, ignoring me completely. "We have a situation," Richard said, clasping his hands. "The market is volatile. Soft. We've had some unexpected overhead costs this quarter." "Overhead costs?" I asked. "Our revenue is up 15%. I saw the numbers. "Projections, Sarah. Not liquidity," he said, using buzzwords that meant nothing. "The point is, we're in a cash flow crunch. I've had to make some hard decisions to save the company." My heart began to race. "What does that mean?" "We're suspending all bonuses for the senior staff," he said. "Suspending?" I choked out. "Richard, I was counting on that money." "You promised it." "I have medical bills." I know," he said, waving his hand. "It's tough for everyone. I'm even taking a cut myself." I glanced at the new Rolex on his wrist. Doubtful. "But that's not all," he continued. "To avoid layoffs, we need to implement a salary adjustment. Across the board. 20% reduction." 20%? I stood up. "Richard, you can't be serious. Inflation is at 7%. You're cutting my salary by 20%? I can't live on that." "It's temporary," he insisted. "Just until we get through this rough patch. We're a family here, Sarah. We all have to tighten our belts." "Is Bella taking a 20% cut?" I asked, looking at her. Bella looked up from her phone. "Actually, my role is being expanded, so my compensation is being adjusted upwards to reflect my new responsibilities." I felt like I had been punched in the gut. "Expanded?" "She orders lunch and runs your dry cleaning. She is the new director of cultural engagement," Richard said stiffly. "And I won't have you disrespecting her. Look, Sarah, take the cut, or..." He shrugged. "There's the door." But good luck finding a VP-level job at your age in this market. He knew he had me. He knew about my mom. He knew I needed the health insurance. He was holding my life hostage. I swallowed my pride. It tasted like ash. Fine, I whispered. I'll take the cut. Great. Richard beamed. That's the team spirit I love. Now, get back to work. We have a lot to do. I walked out of that office shaking. I went to the bathroom, locked myself in a stall, and pressed my forehead against the cool metal of the door. I wanted to scream. I wanted to break something. How was I going to tell my mom? How was I going to pay the mortgage? I stayed there for 10 minutes, trying to compose myself. Then, I heard the bathroom door open. 2 women walked in. Oh my God, did you see it? It was Bella's voice. It's insane, another voice said. Probably the receptionist. Is it a 2024 model? Brand new, Bella bragged. G-Wagon. Matte black. Richard surprised me with it in the parking lot. He said it's a signing bonus for my new title. My blood ran cold. But I thought the company was broke, the receptionist asked. Sarah looked like she was going to throw up when she came out of his office. Bella laughed. A cruel, high-pitched sound. Ugh, Sarah. She's such a drag. Richard said he had to trim the fat to afford the lease on my car. He literally cut her salary to pay for my down payment. Can you believe that? He calls it resource reallocation. The world stopped spinning. He didn't just cut my salary to save the company. He cut my salary to buy his mistress a Mercedes G-Wagon. He took the money for my mother's heart medication and turned it into a luxury SUV for a girl who couldn't even convert a PDF. I sat on the toilet lid, my hand over my mouth, tears streaming down my face. But they weren't tears of sadness anymore. They were tears of rage. Pure, white-hot rage. Resource reallocation, I whispered to myself. I waited until they left. When I walked out of that bathroom, I was a different person. The loyal employee was dead. The woman who wanted to be a team player was gone. If Richard wanted to play with numbers, I was going to show him some numbers. I went back to my desk. I didn't work on the marketing strategy. I opened a blank spreadsheet. I named it the ledger. It was time to go hunting. Opportunity knocked 2 days later, disguised as a client acquisition trip. Richard announced he was going to Miami for a week. Big investors, he told the office. High stakes. I need to be there in person to seal the deal. Naturally, Bella was going too. For administrative support, he claimed, winking at the guys in sales. They left on a Tuesday. The office felt lighter the moment they were gone. But Richard, in his arrogance, had made a mistake. A massive, stupid mistake. He was lazy. Because he barely did any actual work, he never updated his passwords. He never managed his own login credentials. For years, he had relied on me to fix his tech issues. On Wednesday afternoon, we had a crisis. A vendor payment for our server hosting bounced. The vendor called me, screaming that they were going to shut down our email system if they didn't get $15,000 immediately. I don't understand, I told the vendor. We have autopay set up. Card declined, the vendor said. Insufficient funds. Impossible. The operating account should have had over 100 grand in it. I tried to call Richard. Straight to voicemail. I texted Bella. No answer. I had no choice. To save the company email from going dark, I had to log into the master banking portal. Richard was the only one with admin access, but I knew his password. It was Sterling King 1. He hadn't changed it since 2018. I sat at my computer, typed in the username, and typed in the password. Access granted. I navigated to the operating account. My breath hitched. The balance was $420.15. $400. In a company that generated millions. Where was the money? I clicked on Transaction History. The screen filled with rows of transactions. My eyes scanned the dates. March 10th, March 12th, March 14th. It wasn't a business account anymore. It was a diary of a midlife crisis. Mercedes-Benz dealership, $12,000, down payment, Tiffany & Co., $4,500, jewelry, Four Seasons Miami, $8,000, booking deposit, Delta Airlines, $3,200, 2 first-class tickets, Club E11 Even Miami, $2,500, entertainment? I scrolled back further. It was endless. Dinners at Nobu. Weekends in Napa. Designer handbags categorized as office supplies. A rental apartment in the city categorized as remote workspace. He wasn't just overspending. He was embezzling. He was draining the company dry to fund his affair with Bella. I felt sick. Physically ill. This was why there were no bonuses. This was why he cut my salary. It wasn't the market. It was him. He was stealing my mother's healthcare to buy Bella lobster dinners. I printed everything. The printer whirred, spitting out page after page of evidence. I felt like a detective in a noir film, but this was my life. These were my wages. Then I saw something even stranger. Every month, there was a large transfer, $50,000, going into an account labeled E. Sterling Trust. But in the last 3 months, those transfers had stopped. E. Sterling. Eleanor Sterling. His wife. I knew Eleanor vaguely. She came to the Christmas parties. She was quiet, elegant, always standing in Richard's shadow while he held court. Richard spoke of her with a sneer. He told everyone she was fragile, that she had mental health issues, that she was just a housewife who didn't understand business. Why was the company paying her trust? And why had it stopped? I was staring at the screen, putting the pieces together, when a shadow fell across my desk. I jumped, slamming the laptop shut. It was Marcus, the kid from IT. He was 25, brilliant, and hated Richard almost as much as I did. He was wearing a hoodie and holding a Stark Industries mug. "You look like you just saw a ghost, Sarah," Marcus whispered. I looked at him. I had to decide right then. Was he a friend? Or was he a spy? "Marcus," I said, my voice trembling. "Can you trace deleted emails?" Marcus raised an eyebrow. He looked at the printer, which was still spitting out bank statements. He looked at my face. He didn't ask why. He just smirked. "Does a bear perform bodily functions in the woods?" Marcus asked. "Move over." Marcus sat in my chair and his fingers flew across the keyboard. "What are we looking for?" "Anything between Richard and the bank," I said. "And anything related to E. Sterling Trust. You know he's going to fire us if he catches us, right?" Marcus said, not stopping his typing. "He's already destroying us, Marcus," I said. "He cut my salary to buy Bella a G-Wagon. The company account is empty. If we don't do this, the paycheck you're expecting next week? It's going to bounce." Marcus stopped typing. He turned to me, his young face serious. "He's spending the payroll?" "He's spending everything. That son of a..." Marcus cracked his knuckles. "Okay. Let's burn him down. I've been saving a backup of the server on an external drive. He told me to wipe the archives last month." "Space saving," he said. I didn't trust him, so I kept a ghost copy. "You're a genius," I whispered. "I know. Okay, here we go." He pulled up a folder of deleted emails. Hundreds of them. We spent the next 3 hours reading. It was worse than I thought. We found emails from Richard to the CFO, a crony of his, instructing him to hide the expenses under marketing R&D. He was framing me. He was literally putting his fraud under my department code. If the IRS came looking, it would look like I was the one spending the money. He's setting you up as the fall guy, Marcus said, horrified. Sarah, if this goes south, you could go to jail. Rage is a powerful fuel. I wasn't scared anymore. I was focused. Keep digging, I said. What about the wife? Marcus opened a PDF attachment from a lawyer. It was dated 2 years ago. Subject, Sterling Family Trust Power of Attorney. I read the document. My jaw hit the floor. Oh my God, I breathed. What? Richard doesn't own the company, I said, pointing at the screen. Look. The Sterling Media Group is 100% owned by the estate of Arthur Sterling, bequeathed to his sole daughter, Eleanor Sterling. Marcus whistled. He's just an employee? He's a glorified manager, I said. Eleanor owns 60% of the voting stock directly, and the other 40% is in a trust for their kids. Richard has zero equity. He only has operating authority based on a power of attorney. Wait, Marcus scrolled down. Look at this email from last week. It was a notification from the bank to Richard. Alert, authorization signature required from trustee, Eleanor Sterling, for withdrawals exceeding $10,000. Richard had replied with an attachment. A signed authorization form. I looked at the signature. Eleanor Sterling. It was shaky. That doesn't look like the signature on the trust document, Marcus noted. I pulled up a Christmas card Eleanor had sent me last year. I kept it pinned to my cubicle wall because it was sweet. Merry Christmas, Sarah. Love, Eleanor. I compared the signatures. The one on the bank document was a forgery. A bad one. He's forging her signature, I realized. He's stealing from his own wife. He stopped paying her trust allowance, and now he's draining her inheritance to impress Bella. He's not just an adulterer, Marcus said. He's a felon. We have to tell her, I said. How? Marcus asked. Richard controls her access. He screens her calls. He tells everyone she's crazy. If you just call her, he'll spin it. He'll say you're a disgruntled employee trying to hurt his family. I need to see her face to face, I said. I need to show her the receipts. Where is she? Richard is in Miami with Bella, Marcus tapped his chin. So Eleanor is probably at home. But she's gated in. High security. I know where she goes on Wednesdays, I remembered suddenly. 2 years ago, Richard complained that he had to hire a driver because Eleanor refused to stop volunteering at the animal shelter on Wednesdays. He hated that she was cleaning up dog poop. Today is Wednesday, Marcus said. I looked at my watch. 2 p.m. Cover for me, I grabbed the stack of printed evidence. If anyone asks, I'm at a dentist appointment. Go, Marcus said. I'll lock Richard out of the admin panel so he can't delete anything else while you're gone. I'll blame it on a system update. Marcus, I said at the door. Thank you. Get him, Sarah, Marcus grinned. For the bonus. For the bonus, I agreed. I ran to my rattling Honda and drove like a maniac towards the north side animal shelter. The animal shelter smelled like bleach and wet fur. It was a humble place, concrete floors and chain-link fences, a stark contrast to the mansions where the Sterlings lived. I found Eleanor in the back, in the large breed run. She was wearing rubber boots and an oversized t-shirt covered in paw prints. She was scrubbing the floor of a kennel while a massive pit bull licked her ear. She looked happy. Younger. Nothing like the stiff, silent woman at the Christmas parties. Eleanor? I called out softly. She turned, startled. When she saw me, her face closed up. The wall came down. She straightened up, wiping her hands on her jeans. Sarah, she said, confused. From the office? Is Richard okay? Did something happen? Her first instinct was worry for him. It broke my heart. Richard is fine, I said quickly. He's in Miami. Business. Oh. Right, she looked down. Business. She knew. You could see it in her eyes. She knew about Miami, about the business, but she was choosing not to say it. I need to talk to you, Eleanor, I said. It's urgent. It's about the company. And your trust. I don't handle the business, she said automatically, reciting a script. Richard handles all of that. He says it's too complicated for me. You should talk to him when he gets back. Richard is lying to you, I said. She froze. Excuse me? He's lying to you, Eleanor. About the business. About the profits. And about where the money is going. You shouldn't be here, she moved to open the gate. I think you should leave. Richard told me, he told me you've been under a lot of stress. That you're making mistakes. He told you I was incompetent? I asked. Did he also tell you he cut my salary by 20% last week? She stopped. No. He said everyone got bonuses. Nobody got bonuses, Eleanor. The account is empty. I opened my bag and pulled out the folder. I know this is hard. I know he tells you that you can't understand the finances. But I know you're smart. You're Arthur Sterling's daughter. Something sparked in her eyes at her father's name. I have proof, I said, holding out the folder. Receipts. Bank transfers. And signatures. Signatures that look like yours, but we both know they aren't. She stared at the folder. Her hands were trembling. Why are you doing this? She asked. Do you want something? I want my job to mean something, I said. I want to pay my mother's medical bills. And I want to stop a thief from destroying the legacy your father built. He's spending your inheritance on a 24-year-old mistress, Eleanor. And he's framing me for it. She took a deep breath. She looked at the pit bull, who whined softly. Then she looked at me. Show me, she whispered. We went to a small bench outside the shelter. I laid it all out. I showed her the Miami hotel bill, $8,000. I showed her the Tiffany bracelet, $4,500. I showed her the transfer to the consultant Bella Rossi. Eleanor didn't cry. She flipped through the pages with a terrifying intensity. When she got to the forged signature on the bank authorization, she stopped. She traced the ink with her finger. He practiced, she said softly. I saw him doodling on a notepad weeks ago. I thought he was just nervous. He's legally stealing from you, I said. He told me the company was struggling, she murmured. He told me we had to cut my allowance because clients were leaving. He made me feel guilty for buying organic groceries. She looked up, and her eyes were dry. The sadness was gone. Replaced by the same cold fury I had felt in the bathroom. He thinks I'm stupid, she said. He thinks because I like dogs and gardening, I'm an idiot. He thinks he owns you, I said. He owns nothing, Eleanor stood up. She wasn't the fragile housewife anymore. She was the heiress. My father left that company to me. Richard was supposed to be the caretaker. She closed the folder. Snap. When does he get back? She asked. Monday, I said. The quarterly board meeting is on Wednesday morning. Wednesday, she nodded. He loves an audience. She looked at me. Can you get me more? Can you get me everything? The hidden accounts, the tax evasions, all of it? Marcus and I can get you every penny, I promised. Good, she said. Go back to work, Sarah. Act normal. Let him think he's winning. Let him think he's the king. What are you going to do? I asked. Eleanor smiled. It was a chilling smile. I'm going to call my lawyers. And then I'm going to go shopping for a new suit. If he wants a show on Wednesday, I'm going to give him a show. She handed the folder back to me. Keep this safe. I'll see you in the boardroom. Monday morning. The day Richard and Bella returned from Miami. I walked into the office wearing my old navy blazer, the one with the slightly frayed cuff, and a smile that felt like it was stapled to my face. Inside, my stomach was churning acid. I was terrified. Not of them, but of myself. I was terrified I would vomit on Richard's Italian loafers the moment he opened his mouth. But Eleanor's words were ringing in my ears, let him think he's winning. So, I played the part. I played the beaten dog. When Richard strolled in at 11 a.m., tanned a deep bronze that screamed I did not spend a minute in a conference room, I was standing at his desk with a cup of his preferred artisanal blend coffee. Welcome back, Richard, I said, my voice steady. How was the client acquisition? Richard tossed his suitcase onto the leather sofa. He looked energized, manic even. The high of spending stolen money. Incredible, Sarah. Just incredible, he beamed, clapping me on the shoulder. We laid the groundwork for a global expansion. Huge things coming. Huge. That's wonderful, I said. And the receipts? For the accounting department? He waved a hand dismissively. Bella has them. She's organizing the expense report. Just push it through when she gives it to you. Don't worry about the details. It's all top-level clearance. Understood, I nodded. Top level. Then Bella walked in. If Richard looked energized, Bella looked triumphant. She was wearing a white sundress that was completely inappropriate for a corporate environment and carrying a new Louis Vuitton bag. Not a knockoff. The real deal. I know, because I'd seen the $3,200 charge on the American Express statement Marcus had downloaded for me. Sarah, she drawled, dropping her bag onto my old desk, which had been moved to the hallway to make room for a meditation corner, she demanded. Be a doll and grab my dry cleaning from the car? Richard and I are just swamped with follow-up emails. I looked at her. I looked at the car keys she was dangling from her manicured finger. The old Sarah would have refused. The old Sarah would have lectured her on professionalism. But the new Sarah? The new Sarah needed them to feel safe. I needed them to think I was so desperate for my paycheck that I would do anything. Of course, Bella, I said, taking the keys. Anything else? Oh, and get me an iced matcha, she added, turning her back to me to look at her phone. Oat milk. Don't mess it up this time. I walked out to the parking lot. I sat in Richard's car, the company car, and gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. I screamed. A silent scream, trapped behind my teeth. 3 days, I told myself. Just 3 days until Wednesday. The next 48 hours were a masterclass in humiliation. They treated me like a personal servant. Richard made me rewrite his entire quarterly speech because he didn't like the font. Bella made me plan a welcome back office party for them, using the last scraps of the petty cash fund. I had to order cupcakes. I had to blow up balloons that said Dream Team. I stood there in the break room, watching the staff eat stale cupcakes, watching Bella recount their exhausting meetings in Miami while showing off photos that were clearly taken on a yacht. It's so hard being an executive, Bella sighed, taking a bite of a cupcake. You guys have no idea the pressure. Marcus was standing in the corner, holding a paper plate. He caught my eye. He didn't smile, but he tapped his nose twice. The signal. It meant he had the final piece of the puzzle. Later that afternoon, while Richard was napping in his office, door closed, do not disturb, I met Marcus in the server room. The hum of the cooling fans was the only sound. Tell me you got it, I whispered. I got something better than receipts, Marcus said, his eyes gleaming behind his glasses. I got into his personal iCloud. How? He synced his phone to the company Bluetooth in the rental car in Miami, Marcus grinned. And he never disconnected it. It uploaded everything to our cloud backup. He turned his laptop screen toward me. Look at this. It wasn't a receipt. It was a real estate listing. A penthouse condo in downtown Chicago. Price tag, $2.1 million. Okay, so he's looking at condos, I said. He can't afford it. He already bought it. Marcus clicked a file. Closing date was yesterday. Cash offer. Cash? I frowned. Where did he get $2 million cash? We know he's stealing, but the company accounts only show about $400,000 missing in the last month. He didn't take it from the operating account, Marcus said. His voice dropped to a whisper. Sarah, look at the wire transfer source. I squinted at the screen. The world tilted on its axis. No, I gasped. No. Tell me he didn't. He liquidated 40% of the employee pension fund, Marcus said, his voice shaking with rage. He forged the trustee signatures. He claimed it was for emergency reinvestment into a high-yield offshore account. But the offshore account number? It routes directly to the escrow for the condo. I felt the blood drain from my face. The pension fund. That was our money. That was the retirement money for Janet in reception who had worked here for 20 years. That was the money for old Mr. Henderson in logistics. That was my money. He wasn't just stealing from his wife anymore. He was stealing our futures. He's a monster, I whispered. He's actually evil. And look whose name is on the deed, Marcus pointed. I looked. Owners, Richard Sterling and Bella Rossi. Joint tenancy. He stole our retirement to buy a love nest for him and his mistress. Print it, I said. My voice sounded strange, guttural. Print 3 copies. 1 for me. 1 for Eleanor. And 1 for the FBI. We have them, Sarah, Marcus said. We have them dead to rights. Not yet, I said, staring at the names on the deed. We don't just want them arrested. We want them destroyed. We want to make sure that when they walk out of this building on Wednesday, they don't have a shred of dignity left. I took the flash drive from Marcus. It felt heavy in my hand, like a grenade. Go home, Marcus, I said. Sick day tomorrow. I don't want you in the blast zone until the meeting starts. What about you? He asked. I have one more thing to do, I said. I have to finalize the presentation for the board meeting. Richard wanted a show? I'm going to design him a slideshow he'll never forget. Tuesday evening. The office was empty. The cleaning crew was vacuuming the hallway, the rhythmic vroom vroom sound providing a hypnotic backdrop to my anxiety. I was at my desk, my makeshift desk in the hallway, compiling the master file. I had color-coded tabs. I had an index. It was a masterpiece of forensic accounting. My phone buzzed. It was Eleanor. Are you ready? She texted. We found something worse, I replied. The pension fund. 3 dots appeared. Then stopped. Then appeared again. Burn him, was her only reply. I put the phone down. I was just about to pack up when the door to the CEO's office swung open. Richard. He hadn't gone home. Sarah, he barked. Get in here. My heart hammered against my ribs. Had he seen the server logs? Did he know? I walked into his office. It smelled of scotch and expensive leather. Richard was sitting behind his massive desk, a tumbler of amber liquid in his hand. He looked disheveled. His tie was loosened, his eyes slightly bloodshot. Richard? I asked. Sit, he commanded. I sat. He stared at me for a long time, swilling the scotch in his glass. You've been quiet lately, he said softly. Too quiet. I'm just doing my job, Richard, I said. Like you asked. I'm being a team player. Are you? He leaned forward. Because I have this feeling, this nagging little feeling, that you're up to something. I don't know what you mean. Don't play dumb with me, Sarah. He slammed the glass down. Ideally, it would have shattered for dramatic effect, but it was heavy crystal, so it just made a dull, threatening thud. I see the way you look at Bella. I see the way you whisper with that IT kid. He stood up and walked around the desk. He came to stand right behind my chair. I could smell the alcohol on his breath. It was a scent I used to associate with power. Now, it just smelled like fear. Let me make something very clear to you, Richard hissed into my ear. I am the king of this castle. I made you. I hired you when you were a desperate single woman in her 30s, and I gave you a career. I earned my career, I said, staring straight ahead. You earned what I allowed you to earn, he corrected. And if I find out that you are trying to undermine me, if I find out you are leaking information to the board, or God forbid, talking to my wife. He paused. The silence stretched, thin and tight as a wire. I will bury you, Sarah, he whispered. I won't just fire you. I will blacklist you. I will sue you for breach of contract. I will make sure you never work in this industry again. And your mother? The insurance? My breath hitched. I'll fight the Cobra coverage, he smiled, and I could hear the smile in his voice. I'll tie it up in litigation for months. Can she survive months without her heart medication, Sarah? Can she? It took every ounce of strength I had not to turn around and claw his eyes out. He was threatening my mother's life. He was using a dying woman as leverage to protect his stolen condo. I closed my eyes. I thought of the ledger in my bag. I thought of the pension fund document. Let him think he's winning. I forced a tear to slide down my cheek. It wasn't hard. I was terrified. Please, Richard, I whispered, making my voice tremble. Please don't do that. I need the insurance. I promise. I'm not doing anything. I just want to keep my job. Richard chuckled. He patted my shoulder. A condescending, heavy pat. Good girl, he said. I knew you were smart. Just keep your head down, do as Bella says, and maybe next year we'll talk about reinstating that bonus. Thank you, Richard, I said. Now, go home, he said, walking back to his scotch. And make sure the conference room is set up perfectly for tomorrow. I want fresh flowers. Lilies. Bella loves lilies. Lilies, I repeated. Got it. I walked out of the office. My knees were shaking so hard I had to lean against the wall of the elevator. He had threatened my mother. He had crossed the final line. I drove home in silence. I didn't turn on the radio. My mind was a hurricane of focus. When I got to my apartment, I checked on my mom. She was sleeping, her breathing raspy but steady. I kissed her forehead. Tomorrow, Mom, I whispered. Tomorrow we get the money back. I went to my laptop. I opened the presentation file for the board meeting. Richard had sent me his slides earlier, a boring deck full of buzzwords like synergy and paradigm shift. I didn't delete his slides. I just added to them. I inserted hidden slides. Slide 10, the Miami receipts. Slide 15, the pension fund transfer. Slide 20, the condo deed. And then, I set the remote clicker. I programmed it so that when Richard clicked next, it wouldn't go to his sales chart. It would go to my evidence. I saved the file. Final_board_presentation_v2.pptx. I slept for 3 hours. It was a dreamless, black sleep. When my alarm went off at 5 a.m., I didn't hit snooze. I put on my best suit, the charcoal gray one I wore to funerals and big pitches. I put on my red lipstick. Wore paint. I looked in the mirror. Sarah the victim was gone. Sarah the executioner was ready for work. Wednesday 9 a.m. The boardroom was buzzing. The smell of expensive coffee and old money filled the air. The board of directors had arrived. There were 7 of them. Mostly older men in navy suits who had known Eleanor's father. They were conservative, serious men who cared about 2 things, dividends and stability. And then there was Eleanor. She hadn't arrived yet. Richard had told the board she was under the weather and wouldn't be attending. A shame, said Mr. Henderson, the chairman of the board. We haven't seen Eleanor in months. You know how she is, Richard sighed, adjusting his silk tie. He looked immaculate, showing no signs of the scotch from the night before. Her nerves. She finds these meetings distressing. Of course, Henderson nodded sympathetically. Poor woman. I stood in the corner, by the laptop hooked up to the projector. My hands were folded in front of me. I was invisible. Just the help. Bella breezed in at 9:15 a.m. She was wearing a tight pink dress that looked like she was going to a brunch, not a board meeting. She sat down right next to Richard, placing a Starbucks cup on the polished mahogany table without a coaster. Mr. Henderson frowned at the cup. Okay, everyone, let's get started. Richard clapped his hands. We have a packed agenda. Exciting times for Sterling Media. The lights dimmed. The projector hummed to life. Title slide, Sterling Media, Q3 Strategic Vision presented by Richard Sterling, CEO. As you know, Richard began, pacing the front of the room like a televangelist. The market has been challenging. But under my leadership, we have pivoted. We have trimmed the fat. He glanced at me when he said trimmed the fat. We are leaner. More agile, Richard continued. And we are investing in talent. He gestured to Bella. I'd like to introduce Bella Rossi, our incoming VP of Marketing. Mr. Henderson adjusted his glasses. VP? She looks quite young. Youth is the currency of the future, Bob. Richard laughed. Bella has her finger on the pulse of the digital generation. Go ahead, Bella. Share your vision. Bella stood up. She didn't have notes. She flipped her hair. So, Bella began. Marketing is all about vibes, right? We need to be on TikTok. We need to do challenges. I was thinking we could do a dance challenge with the staff. It would go viral. Silence. Absolute, deafening silence. Mr. Henderson looked at the other board members. One of them coughed. A dance challenge? Henderson asked. For a B2B logistics advertising firm? Exactly. Bella beamed. It's ironic. Gen Z loves irony. I bit the inside of my cheek so hard I tasted blood. It was embarrassing. It was humiliating. But Richard nodded along like she was reciting Shakespeare. Brilliant, Richard said. Disruptive. Thank you, Bella. He took the floor again. Now, let's talk numbers. Sarah, next slide. This was it. My hand hovered over the laptop. I could do it now. I could click the button and show the receipts right now. But not yet. The hook wasn't set deep enough. I clicked. Slide 2, Revenue Projections. The slide showed a graph going up. A fake graph, manipulated by Richard, but it looked good. We are projecting a 20% growth, Richard lied effortlessly. Costs are down. Efficiency is up. What about the rumors regarding the liquidity issues? Asked a board member named Mrs. Gable. We heard vendors were being paid late. Glitches, Richard waved his hand. Software transition. Nothing to worry about. Our cash position is stronger than ever. Stronger than ever, I repeated under my breath. In fact, Richard smiled, I am so confident in our direction that I am announcing a restructuring of the department. As I mentioned to Sarah earlier. He turned to me. The shark smile was back. Sarah has been with us for a long time. But as we move toward this vibes-based marketing, he actually used her word. We feel it is time for a change. He was doing it. He was firing me. In front of the board. To show his power. To show he could cut the dead weight. Sarah, Richard said, his voice dropping to that faux sympathetic tone. We appreciate your service. But as of today, we are terminating your contract. The room went quiet. The board members looked uncomfortable. Firing a senior director in a board meeting was unheard of. It was cruel. Right now? Mrs. Gable asked. Richard, surely this can be handled in private? Transparency is key. Richard insisted. We are ripping off the band-aid. Out with the old, in with the new. He looked at me. Pack your things, Sarah. Bella needs your office. This was the moment. The moment from the beginning of my story. The moment where I should have cried. Instead, I looked at him. I looked at Bella, who was smirking and checking her reflection in her phone screen. I felt a strange sense of calm. The calm of a sniper who has lined up the shot and is just waiting for the wind to die down. You're right, Richard, I said, my voice projecting clearly across the room. Transparency is key. I stepped away from the laptop. I walked to the head of the table. You said the cash position is stronger than ever, I said. Is that why the pension fund is empty? Richard froze. What did you say? And you said costs are down, I continued. Is that why you spent $42,000 on a week in Miami for client acquisition that involved 0 clients and a lot of room service? That is enough. Richard roared. Security. Get her out. And you said you are investing in talent, I looked at Bella. Is a $2.1 million condo in downtown Chicago the standard signing bonus for an assistant, or is that just for the ones you're sleeping with? The room erupted. Board members were gasping. Bella dropped her phone. You are fired. Richard was purple. He lunged for the phone on the wall to call security. I don't think I am, I said. Because you don't have the authority to fire me. You don't even have the authority to be in this room. I looked at the double doors. 3, 2, 1, the door swung open. Eleanor Sterling walked in. If you thought the silence before was heavy, this was vacuum sealed. She looked magnificent. She wasn't the cowed, nervous woman Richard had described for years. She was a titan. She walked to the head of the table, her heels clicking a rhythm of war. Behind her walked 2 men. One I didn't know, a serious man with a briefcase. The other I knew very well. It was Marcus. And he was holding a stack of files thick enough to choke a horse. Eleanor? Richard stammered. He looked like he was seeing a ghost. Honey? What are you doing here? I told the board you were sick. I'm feeling much better, Richard, Eleanor said. She didn't look at him. She looked at the chairman. Hello, Bob. Sorry I'm late. I had to stop by the district attorney's office. Mr. Henderson stood up. Eleanor, what is going on? Sarah, Eleanor nodded to me. Show them. I walked back to the laptop. I clicked the remote. Slide 3, the real numbers. The screen changed. Gone was the fake growth chart. In its place was the spreadsheet Marcus and I had built. This, I said, pointing to the screen, is the actual financial state of Sterling Media. We are in the red. Deep red. Lies. Richard screamed. She hacked the system. She's disgruntled. Click, I said. Slide 4, the Miami expenses. Photos of the receipts filled the screen. The hotel suite. The Tiffany jewelry. The first-class tickets. And a photo Marcus had found on Bella's public Instagram, her and Richard drinking champagne in a bathtub, timestamped during the client meeting. Bella shrieked. "Take that down. That's private." "You posted it on the internet, Bella," I said coldly. "It's public domain." Slide 5, the pension fund. This was the kill shot. The screen showed the wire transfer. $2.1 million moved from the Employee Pension Trust to RR Real Estate Holdings. And then the deed showing Richard and Bella as owners. The boardroom exploded. "My God," Mrs. Gable stood up, hand over her mouth. "Richard, tell me this isn't true." "That's federal prison time. That's the employee's money." Richard was cornered. He looked wild. He looked at Eleanor. "Eleanor, stop this," he begged. "They're manipulating you. Sarah is jealous. She's trying to ruin us. I did this for us. For the family." Eleanor finally looked at him. Her gaze was filled with such pity and disgust that Richard flinched. "For the family?" she asked softly. "You forged my signature, Richard. I saw the bank documents. You stole my father's legacy to buy her a condo." She pointed at Bella. Bella shrank into her chair. "I didn't know. I swear. He told me it was his money. He told me he was divorcing you." "Oh, he is," Eleanor said. "Or rather, I am divorcing him. But not before I fire him." Eleanor turned to the lawyer she brought. "Mr. Blackwood, if you please." The lawyer stepped forward. "Richard Sterling, by the power vested in Eleanor Sterling as the majority shareholder and sole trustee, you are hereby removed as CEO, effective immediately, for cause. Specifically, embezzlement, fraud, breach of fiduciary duty, and forgery." "You can't do this." Richard slammed his fist on the table. "I built this company." "You milked this company," I corrected him. "I built it. The team built it. You just spent it." Richard lunged. He actually lunged across the table towards Eleanor. I don't know what he intended to do, grab the papers, maybe? Or hurt her? But he never got there. The doors opened again. 2 police officers and 2 agents in windbreakers that said FBI Financial Crimes stepped in. "Richard Sterling?" the lead agent asked. Richard froze. He looked at the window, as if contemplating jumping. "We were on the 40th floor." "I can explain," Richard whispered. The fight went out of him. He slumped. "You can explain it to the judge," the agent said. "Hands behind your back." The sound of the handcuffs clicking was the most beautiful sound I have ever heard. Better than any symphony. Better than any applause. As they dragged him out, he passed me. He stopped for a second. His eyes were wide, terrified. "Sarah," he rasped. "Help me. Tell them it was a mistake. I'll give you the bonus. Triple the bonus." I leaned in close. I wanted him to hear this. "Richard," I whispered. "I don't want the bonus. I want the receipts." Then I looked at Bella. She was trying to sneak out the back door during the commotion. "Not so fast, Miss Rossi," Eleanor called out. Bella froze. "The police will need to speak to you about the condo," Eleanor said. "Since your name is on the deed, you are an accessory to wire fraud." Bella started sobbing. Loud, ugly sobbing. "But I'm just an assistant. I'm just 24. "Then you're old enough to know better," I said. "And by the way? Give me the keys to the G-Wagon. It's company property." She threw the keys at me. I caught them with one hand. The police led Richard out. The FBI agents sat down with Bella. The board members sat in stunned silence. Eleanor stood at the head of the table. She took a deep breath. She looked at the empty chair where her husband had sat for 10 years. Then she looked at me. Sarah, she said, her voice clear and authoritative. I believe we have a vacancy for the position of CEO. Would you be interested in the interim title? While we clean up this mess? Mr. Henderson cleared his throat. I think that is an excellent idea. Motion to appoint Sarah Jenkins as interim CEO? Seconded, Mrs. Gable said immediately. All in favor? Aye, said everyone in the room. I looked at Eleanor. She winked. A tiny, almost imperceptible wink. I accept, I said. First order of business, we are restoring the pension fund. And second order of business. I'm going to need a coffee. A real one. Not the swill Richard drinks. The next few hours were a blur of legal depositions and forensic data dumps. Marcus was the hero of the day. He walked the FBI through the server logs, showing every transfer, every forgery. Richard's bail was denied. Turns out, when you steal $2 million from a pension fund and have offshore accounts, you're a flight risk. Bella turned state's witness against him in about 5 minutes. She gave them everything, passwords, texts, locations of hidden cash. In exchange, she got a reduced sentence, probation and community service. And she had to pay back every cent of the gifts Richard had given her. The Cartier bracelet, the Louboutins, the handbags, all seized by the feds to repay the company. Last I heard, she moved back to her parents' basement in Ohio and is trying to become a lifestyle influencer, but her comments section is filled with former Sterling employees reminding her about the pension fund. As for Richard, he's looking at 15 to 20 years. The forgery charges alone are enough to bury him. Eleanor is ruthless. She isn't just divorcing him, she is suing him for emotional distress and fraud. She is stripping him of everything. But the best part? The absolute cherry on top? 2 days after the arrest, I was sitting in the CEO's office, which I had fumigated to get rid of the smell of his cologne. I was reviewing the accounts. We were going to be okay. It would be tight, but with Richard's salary gone and the seized assets returned, we could save the company. My phone rang. It was the hospital billing department. My heart sank. I braced myself for the fight. Hello, this is Sarah. Ms. Jenkins? This is St. Mary's billing. We're calling about your mother's account. I know, I said, rubbing my temples. I'm sending a payment of $500 today. Please don't send it to collections. Oh, no, Ms. Jenkins, the voice said. We're calling to tell you the balance has been paid in full. I froze. What? Paid in full. A check was wired yesterday. $42,000. Who paid it? It was an anonymous donor. The note just says, for the real work. E. Eleanor. I put the phone down and put my head on the desk. And for the first time in 6 months, I cried. Not tears of rage. Tears of relief. 3 months have passed since that day. I am no longer the interim CEO. I am the CEO. Officially. I hired Marcus as the new CTO. He wears a hoodie to board meetings, and nobody cares because he keeps our data safer than Fort Knox. Eleanor comes into the office 3 days a week. She's the chairwoman. She brings her dog. She's learning the business, and she's actually really good at it. She has a calmness that Richard never had. We make a good team. The widow and the workhorse. The company is thriving. We didn't do the TikTok dance challenge. Instead, we focused on what we're good at, solid, reliable logistics marketing. We got the Johnson account back. We got the vendors paid. And the pension fund? It's fully restored. My mom is doing better. The stress of the debt is gone, and her heart is stronger. She watched the news report about Richard's arrest and said, I never liked his hair. Too shiny. I drive the G-Wagon now. Well, sort of. The company kept it as a company car, but I take it to meetings. It drives smooth. I learned a lot from this. I learned that loyalty to a toxic boss is not a virtue, it's a vulnerability. I learned that you should never underestimate the quiet woman in the corner. And I learned that if you're going to screw over the person who handles your finances, you better make sure you changed your passwords first. So, to anyone watching this who feels undervalued, who feels like they are carrying the weight of the world while someone else takes the credit, keep your receipts. Know your worth. And remember, the glass ceiling isn't made of glass. It's made of the incompetence of the men above you. And sometimes, all you need to shatter it is a little bit of courage, and a very good IT guy. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed seeing justice served, hit that like button. And tell me in the comments, what's the worst thing a boss has ever done to you? I'll be reading.